Welcome to the Protect the Asset podcast, episode number 7. And today my guest is none other than Ed Haynes. Ed is the CEO and founder of Coastal CrossFit Hong Kong. He also runs an online group program called The Process Programming, and he's the co-founder of Earned Athletics Apparel. How does this guy run 3 businesses, keep fit, manage a team, deliver a podcast, find time for a healthy work-life balance, and do so much more? I've known Ed since 2010 and I've watched his career grow from a distance, so it was great to reconnect with Ed and to hear about his career journey. I was super inspired by so much of this conversation, and when I was going through trying to figure out the highlights, I was just highlighting everything. There's so much to take away from this podcast. We talk about leadership, we talk about extreme ownership, we talk about self-reflection, self-development, we talk about company values. There are just so many gold nuggets throughout this conversation, and I'll be listening to it multiple times. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Let's get stuck in.
Personally, I'm doing really well, in a really great headspace. The last 2.5 years has for sure tested my resiliency as a human, but I'm still here and I'm still thriving. So a bit of context, we essentially are kind of still dealing with COVID, and Hong Kong government has basically, implemented a zero COVID policy. So that is the goal. And actually we're doing a really amazing job, to be fair, until Omicron decided to rear its ugly head over here. And that just, is obviously spread like wildfire, like it pretty much did everywhere else in the world. But the government is still persistent on trying to maintain this zero COVID policy. So we have, as a gym, we are currently in our 5th round of business closure. And we are, but it's not all doom and gloom. We are going to open up next Friday, which will have meant that we will have spent 1/4 of 2022 closed as a gym for the 5th time.
Wow.
But we are opening up again. I don't think this is not the end of COVID measures and all that, but for sure it's been challenging. But I'm well, thank you, Stretch. That's a long-winded answer.
That's a long-winded answer. That's it, mate. Yeah, I want to get into that because it must be a very stressful time for you as a business owner, as for so many other people as well. So it'd be awesome to hear about that. Just to go a bit deeper, man, like what's going on in your world at the moment? Like there's so much I see on Instagram and see what you're up to. What's your career right now? What does it look like?
Yeah, so Coastal, ever since I've known you, when we first, I think, did the Poliquin course, and I don't even know what year that was. Was that 2000?
I was trying to remember too, mate. It was way back.
I would have said probably 2000 and, I don't know, 10, 11 maybe?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I'm the owner of Coastal Fitness, which is now we're just entering year 14. 2009 was where we first set up. So entering year 14 as a gym. So essentially what that is, it's a brick and mortar. We've got an amazing facility here in Hong Kong. We're essentially an affiliate, but we don't necessarily identify solely with CrossFit. So we're a strength and conditioning facility, lots of bias towards education, group training, individual coaching, all of that. So Coastal Fitness has been kind of the main thing, but at the start of COVID 2.5 years ago, we launched our online program, which was the Process Programming. The Process Programming was kind of 5 years in the works, but we didn't actually create an official business until COVID all kicked off. So essentially what the Process Programming is, it's an online training platform. We've got 6 different group programs available, got a massive coaching team who is kind of giving people feedback, and we're just basically building this global community via coaching individually in groups, but also we've started an affiliate program where we basically have affiliate gyms who are now part of the Process Programming. And something in the pipeline is we are building educational courses now, which has been something I've always wanted to do, but only now have kind of got the time and the energy and the resources to actually do it. So that's super exciting. So those are the main 2 things that I spend most of my time doing. 2 years ago, also started a new business venture called Earned Athletics. So that was, essentially went into a partnership with one of our members and one of my friends to explore the world of fitness apparel, which is something that was completely new to me. It didn't really know anything about it, and it's been really challenging. Also, I think, starting an apparel business in the midst of a very challenging time for the world where, it's essentially e-commerce and we're supposed to be traveling around the world and meeting people and whatever, a lot of that didn't happen. So that's provided its own set of challenges, but that's also been a really interesting journey. But, I would say that, 99% of my energy and my passion lies in coaching people and education. Still, so Coastal and the process program are my main things. And athletic is just an interesting side hobby where I play much more of a supporting role to the guy Alan, who is mainly the CEO there.
Yeah, that's it, mate.
That's
you're one of the fitness models. I've seen your pictures.
Yeah, I basically self-elect myself to take all the photos. That was no one else's choice but myself.
Yeah, that's it, mate. I vote myself in.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got the look, mate, especially now with the tash.
Thank you. I'm giving it a go. Puberty starts later for some people, so it's better late than never.
Yeah, that's it, mate. Do you think COVID was the thing that really kickstarted, the process plan for you, like actually forcing you to jump online and start to create this, or do you think that would have happened at the same time anyway?
Yeah, so actually I do think COVID was a massive catalyst for so many things, actually. In terms of all my businesses, it really challenged us to look at best practices and look at how we can improve things and think about things like scalability and think about how we can provide value when you don't get to do it in like face-to-face, develop human relations and connections like we become so accustomed to. So COVID, I'm always going to look back on the years of COVID as, some of actually my best years as a human. I think there's so much just growth has happened here. I'm going to be very thankful for COVID in many ways. But for the process programming, so essentially before we officially created the process programming, I was actually already writing group programs, mainly for our affiliate here, Coastal. But I was actually giving that out for free. And I did that for about 3.5 years. So I basically used my Instagram page and be like, hey, I'm writing this group program. If anyone would be interested in being a part of it, I'm going to give you access absolutely for free. All I ask for in return is that you provide me with feedback on how we can make it better. And I want you to log all your results, because essentially what we were doing was, the way that the process program works is that it's essentially a semi-individualized group program. So we write the program out there. We have lots of people following it, but we interpret all the data that comes in. And so the new training cycle, every new training cycle, or the goals of the program, or the avatars of the program is all based upon the current subscribers. So this was kind of like my chance to really like find a way to make this work. So I essentially ran the process programming without calling it the process programming for free for 3 years. Wow. And then, when COVID hit, the catalyst was, I wanted to provide something for the world to help the world in a time of need. And obviously everyone had lost gyms. Instagram and social media was amazing because there's loads of people coming out and giving these free bodyweight workouts. But I also knew that what people were actually giving was, whilst the intentions were fantastic, which was to help people, I also knew that stimulus wasn't really what people needed. Everyone was just doing high intensity stuff, smashing each other. And, as the CrossFit space, we've been doing that for years. And we know that that's not necessarily the most sustainable or the most healthy means of fitness. And it just is something I don't really kind of agree with as a health prescription. So basically, what can we do for the world to help them out in these tough times? Basically, everyone had their gyms taken away from them. Everyone was kind of trying to make do with training at home with minimal equipment. So we created the Gymless program. So the Gymless program was essentially exactly what I'd been doing for our other group programs. It's 5 days of structured training a week. It was delivered on a platform where there was coaches' notes, there was videos, gave people the chance to log their scores and receive coaches' feedback. And so basically started this Gymless program. And that was the reason we're like, okay, we need a website for this. We need to get this out. We need to let the world know that this is here. We're not going to have a cost in it. We're just going to do it for free. And so I was like, this is the time. This is where we're going to now create this online program just to get this Gymless program out. And we did. And it was crazy, the uptake. We never did any paid promotions, and we never have done, and we still run it. So 2.5 later, it's still a completely free program. We have a coach who is in charge. It's not myself anymore, kind of handed over the reins to one of my other team members. She puts so much effort and time into it. And we have over 4,500 people around the world who are part of that community now.
Yeah.
And yeah, not everyone's logging scores every day, but that's the kind of the network. And it's just like every day it's just slowly growing and growing and growing. So yeah, I guess COVID was the catalyst for creating the process. And it all came from, the Gymless program.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Sounds great. It's impressive how quickly you guys pivoted. I think a lot of businesses, when it hit, were like, okay, I've got to pivot and jump online. But, I think the foundations that you obviously had set up from that free program that you were already doing gave you that ability to pivot quickly. And it sounds like you've made something pretty incredible there that people just jump towards, really.
Yeah, well, I think a big part of it as well was thinking about our own community at Coastal. Like, all these guys, we normally train with them 5+ days a week, and these guys didn't have a gym to train in anymore. They didn't have a way to have structured training and receive coaches' feedback. And we needed to find a way to keep our community integrated, which is, versus most gyms just said, cool, we're closed. We'll see you in a few months when the government lets us open again. And we were like, we can't do that. Like, this is our family. We need to help these guys somehow. So a big drive for the Gymless program was to create something actually for our community and for our members. But then then we made the decision, let's share this with the world. And so then it just grew. Yeah.
Yeah. Wicked, mate. Wicked. I'm curious to know more about your time management skills, mate. Like, you're doing so much, like there's so many different things going on. Tell us a little bit about how you go managing your time.
Yeah. So I think if you kind of look at it from face value on something like social media, it looks like, how does this guy run 3 businesses and do all of it? And I think, behind every great business is a really, really great team. And, I think back 10 years ago, maybe less, 8 years ago, when I think about what my role was at Coastal, like I was doing everything. I was like the accountant, I was the lawyer, I was like writing all the emails, I was writing the programs, I was educating the coaches, doing HR jobs. And to be honest, I hated more than half of it. And I was really shit at more than half of it as well. So, I think that's just a natural evolution of a business owner, is that you start to, and it's not just a business owner. We have the same policy with all of our employees as well. It's like constantly searching for the things that you're really good at and you're really passionate about, and making sure those are the things you're actually doing on a daily basis. And so, that's essentially what the business career has looked like. It's constantly asking myself, what do I want to be doing? What am I really good at? And like, let's make it so I'm doing those things. And the things I'm not good at, or the things I don't want to do, there is someone out there who's really good at those things and who's better at me doing those things and who loves doing that shit.
Yeah.
And so, what I have now, I have an amazing team. This is just a bit of context. I have an amazing team who do a lot of the things that I don't like doing, or I'm not very good at, which allows me to be fully focused on the things that I think I'm good at and I really like doing. So, but I am a very regimented, a very structured person. And I've learned in recent years, learning to be a little bit more balanced with it. I think, so coming into year 14 as a business owner now, and I would say that probably 10 to 12 years of that was not balance. There was it was all in with work and coaching and self-development and self-growth. And I don't regret any of those. I think those are all really important years, but I think I'm at a point in life now where like other things are important as well. Like I love training in the gym, but I also want to get out and explore what my body can do, not in the gym. Like I want to get in the water. I want to play sports again. Like sports was really like the thing that I did forever. And then I kind of stopped it. Well, I guess CrossFit's a sport, but I just stopped playing and I stopped exploring. I made a lot of sacrifices in those years, perhaps like social relationships didn't blossom the way they could have. Maybe I didn't travel and explore the world as much as I wanted. Everything was just so work focused. And I guess now I'm at a point where I'm just trying to find more balance with it all. So basically how my day is structured is that I talk about my routines a lot. I have pretty diligent nighttime and morning routines. That doesn't really change. I know that those are the 2 fundamental parts which allow me to be successful every single day. And then, it's just like my goal every day is just to be deeply present in what I'm doing. And I generally find that my presence starts to waver after about 3 hours. So I can go all in with jobs, tasks, work. But after about 2-3 hours, when I feel concentration wavering or having to get myself up or force myself to focus, I just step back now and I'm like, okay, now it's time for a bit of a break. Maybe I'll go outside and walk for 20 minutes or, just get some sunshine. I love getting the sunshine. I'll catch up with some of my colleagues at work, jump on a call or just like meditate and just sit in silence. Actually, sometimes I do a lot of that these days, but yeah, my day is very regimented. General protocols is that my day always starts with some form of work where I'm sat in front of a computer, whether it's programming, it's coaching, it's calls, it's thought creation, whatever it is. Maybe it's recording a podcast, but I always try to stack the most important, the most challenging things first in my day. And then essentially the task and activity follow on from that, and the rest of the day are getting simpler and simpler and simpler. I guess the same way that you would look at training design when writing a program. Like you want to start with the most complex stuff first, most challenging stuff first, and essentially it should get simpler as the day goes on or the session goes on. And that's basically exactly how I structure my days.
Yeah, that's great, mate. I'll bottle all of that. What you just said there is sound advice for so many coaches. And there's so much in there I want to unpack. rewind back to, this team and, you creating this team. Like, I think so many business owners, like you said yourself, you were taking on all the responsibilities, you were doing all the work. How did you let go of that? How did you just go, okay, I can let someone else do this. I don't have to have my finger in everything.
Yeah. Well, it took a really long time, and it took a lot of doing the wrong thing to realize that there was another way of doing it. Like thinking back to me as a person was very egotistical, was very, light control, refused to delegate, wanted to be the face of everything. And so basically what I'm saying is that like the way that I ran a business was just a reflection of who I was as a person. And so what, that leads to, and I was just a very headstrong person. And I think a lot of people who get into running businesses are, and I always admire people who can get into running businesses and not have those maybe not so nice aspects of being a human. So anyway, I had all those, which is cool. And, like life has been one big journey of trying to let go of those things and really trying to change myself as a person. And basically, in a nutshell, the more I've developed myself and worked on myself as a person, the more my businesses and my relationships have flourished. But essentially there was a breaking point in my journey as a leader. And it probably came about 6 or 7 years ago, where Coastal was successful. It was growing really fast. My team had gone from, started with just me, then it moved to 3 people, then it moved to 5 people. And then suddenly I was running team meetings with like 12, 14 full-time employees. And I just didn't essentially have the skills I didn't have the skills to be able to run an efficient team, which was full of different personalities, different values, different experiences, different upbringings. The way that my business started was like, it was 3 of us who were all really good friends already. So like, I didn't have to have professional relationships, so to speak, with these people. They were kind of like my rugby gym buddies who I was also running a business with. And that's really who my entire social circle was before that point, was basically like rugby gym buddies. And so as more people started to join the team, I just realized that I just wasn't doing a good job anymore. And how I knew I wasn't doing a good job was that, I was stressed out all the time. I was stressed with like the people I was dealing with. I was thinking about like walking out from my business and just doing things by myself. Like, why do I need other people? It's too hard to have other people. I could see that it was affecting my team. They weren't driven. They weren't motivated. They weren't doing the jobs that I really wanted to do. Staff were leaving, and I realized there was just a point in time, like, I know exactly when the point was. It was just one team meeting where we were doing professional development, and I just basically lost it. And I was like, the fuck is wrong with you guys? Like, don't you love what you do? What's wrong with you? Why don't you work harder? Why don't you do more? Like basically, guys, why can't you be me? Was essentially what I was saying, which is ridiculous now I think about it.
Yeah.
But that moment was really poignant. And I remember I then had a 2-week holiday where I just had some space to just reflect and think. And up until that point, I'd taken ownership for a lot of things in my life. I like my own training and my own development as a person, but I also realized that I had a tendency to point the finger for a lot of other things in my life. So when things weren't going well, it'd be like your fault, his fault, her fault. And the book that I read that summer was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, which is basically, the concept that like take a ruthless approach to taking ownership for absolutely everything that happens in your life. And I kind of read this book and I thought about the situation I just dealt with before I went on holiday. And I was like, actually, I could trace every single one of these issues back to something that I've done or I haven't done. And essentially that was the changing point for me. I ended up basically coming back from that summer, took extreme ownership for absolutely everything. And that was really the catalyst for all the self-growth. It was like, okay, well, if this isn't going the way I want it to be, or I want this to be better, what could I have done better? Holy shit, like I've got a lot of work to do. And essentially, that the next like 3-4 years was just constant discoveries of shortcomings of me as a person, and realizing like there's work to do and I need to put the work in for myself. And essentially, like that's where everything began to flourish. I started to be able to develop and create better relationships with people. The team got tighter, the team got closer. I started to speak to people more, understand people more, invest more in the human relationships versus just thinking about growth as a company. And I would say now probably what makes our company unique is the relationships between the team are super close, and it always will be. We do lots of things, I think, on a weekly basis that are quite unique, that help bring our team closer all the time. And the way that I always think about it is I relate it a lot back to sport, thinking about playing rugby, and you're trying to think about like when was I a part of a unit or a team where it was just like we were just unbeatable. And every time I think about it, was like it was like 15 friends, or if it was seven friends just willing to do anything for each other. And that was a really special, that was always a real special recipe for what led to being a successful team. And so I now take that and adopt that same philosophy with my team. It's like, I always say to the team, like, we need to be a championship winning team. To be a championship winning team, we need every person within this team to be singing off the song sheet, and, to believe in the same values, and to want to spend time with each other, not feel like they have to be forced to spend time with each other. And like, we're not there yet. We've got like lots of rock star players in the team, but like, we need the entire squad to be rock stars. And that's just going to take time, but that's the vision and that's the goal of where I want to get to.
That's incredible, mate. So powerful, and such a great realization to sort of have, because my experience working in the gym and owning the gym as well, like you say, coaches have all got their different values. Coaches have all got their different beliefs. And when you're trying to stand up and be a leader and force them into line, it just doesn't work. You're just banging heads. So to be able to sit back and realize that, and to be able to help your team transition to become rock stars, like you say, who work together, that must be an incredible feeling.
Yeah. And I think the very first part of that is like, you need to have values yourself. Like, you can't expect to find a team of people who all align perfectly if you haven't set what the standard is that you're looking for. And so, going back to like why self-growth was so important, is essentially that the values of my organizations now are essentially just my values. It's the value, the 6 values, we call it the Coastal 6 now, or it's actually the Process 6 or the Earn 6. It kind of goes across every organization I'm a part of. But those 6 values are the 6 values that I live and govern my life by. And what we did, we basically put those values out there. We printed it on our walls in our gym. We put it on our social media. We put it on the website and said, like, this is what makes a Coastal or a Process person. And what started to happen was that people around the world would read those values and be like, those are the same values that I live by. I want to be a part of that now. And so rather than me having to change people or try and evolve people to adhere to values, people are now coming based on those values and saying, those are the values that I love. This is also a passion of mine and a purpose of mine. How can I be a part of it? And, that's, I think, just having that clarity right from the start is such an essential key ingredient to building a good team.
Yeah, for sure. It's like surrounding yourself with the people you align with. Like you say, you're not going to be 100% on the same page with your values, but if there's, 80%, 75% in common, then they're the sort of people you want. And like, not only your staff, like you say, the clients that you're working with, to align your values with those guys, super, super, super powerful, mate. I'm very impressed with, the passion that you have behind that. Can I ask what some of those values are?
Yeah, for sure. So being honest and humble is one of them. And a lot of that, honesty, we all know what honesty is, but honesty is obviously being honest with yourself first and foremost, but being honest with others. Humbleness is about being able to give feedback, but also receive feedback. Vulnerability is a super important one, which is essentially being able to ask for help and not being afraid to ask for help, and obviously not being afraid to share your struggles. That's probably the most challenging one of all our values, because, I certainly think back to my former self. I was not a vulnerable person at all, kept all my feelings inside, swept them under the rug. But, like, now it's something I really embrace on like everything. I try and be as vulnerable as I can, even on things like social media. Taking ownership, of course, that's one of the main ones for us. Having a growth mindset. A growth mindset is essentially, contrary to the growth mindset is a fixed mindset, which is basically, I am the way I am and I'm never going to change. Whereas the growth mindset embraces the fact that we can all change and we have power and control over that. Growth mindset, fixed mindset, being a good human is super important. Now, I know that in that one that can be subjective and down to the eyes of the beholder, but for things like me, it's just being courteous, it's being kind, and it's being nice. What else have we got? I should know these off the back of my hand. I'm pretty sure maybe we nailed all 6 there.
All 6 there, mate. It's great.
Yeah. So those are our 6 values. Yeah.
Yeah. Where did those values come from? Did you just sit down yourself and sort of think about your own values, or was that a group effort as a team to come up with those values? Were you working with a business coach? Like, what made you actually sit down and go, you know what, I need to get my values clear?
Yeah, I love the question, because that was those values, coming up with those 6 values was probably the end of like a 3-year project for me. And so the way I went about, why I even thought about values in the first place was because every business book, every mentor I talked to was like, you need to have values. All right, okay, well, let me make some values then. How the fuck do I make values? And so I spent a couple of years where I'd have team meetings where it'd be like value creation meetings where we'd sit as a team, be like, okay, tell me the things that you think are really important. It's like, you just get the same cliche answers. Everyone's like, you shouldn't judge people. Okay, cool. So right, you shouldn't judge people. Like, oh, you should be honest. Okay, yeah, like honesty, I like that. Like you be nice to other humans. Cool. So basically what happened, I had like this spreadsheet of like 50 different things, which like, every person could just probably list and guess what all 50 of those things are. Basically like good human attributes. And then I'd like, I'd go away and be like, I need to whittle this down to like 30. And so I'd like chop off 20, present 30, but what do we think? And everyone would be like, oh yeah, that's quite good. And I'm like, fuck, why? No one's buying into this. Anyway, so like then I took it from 30 to 20. Anyway, like this process, honestly, went on for years, trying to and I still have that spreadsheet, but was just getting nowhere. And I was like, but no one's buying into this. And essentially the catalyst was again COVID. And the catalyst was in our first round of closure. We obviously, I think I'm a big believer, like challenging people show their true colors in challenging times. And we had a really challenging time for us, like just like the rest of the world. Business has been closed, trying to think about how you can like pay your staff. How can you get your staff to be motivated to provide value to people? What I started to realize was that within our team, and I knew a lot of these things already, but there were some people in my team who I was just like, okay, I love this person. I don't know why, but I love this person. I want this person to be here forever. And I'd have other people in my team who I'd be like, okay, I just don't align with this person. I'm not sure what it is. I keep on doing things that just frustrate me, anger me, annoy me. Like they're toxic. They affect other people. And you just like, you can't really put a finger on what makes this person great and what makes this person not so great. And there was just literally this one day when I went home and I was trying to think about that question. I was just sitting on that, like, what is it that makes these people great? What makes it not, what makes them not great? So I tried to think about, coming up with values, which essentially are governing principles for you to live your life, is a really, really hard thing because there's millions of things out there that it could potentially be. But a much easier route that I took was like, okay, well, what do I not agree with? What are the things I really don't align with? What are things? So I thought about those people that I didn't align with. I thought, what are the things that these guys and girls do that frustrates me, angers me, annoys me, affects other people negatively? And so I started listing those things down. And it was honestly in that exercise of writing down the things that I didn't align with or I didn't agree with, that I suddenly came up, honestly, within 30 minutes, these 5 or 6 values. It was amazing. It was like, and I had this whiteboard in my house and I was just scribbling away, and it would start with like honesty and humbleness. And it was like, I didn't need cheat sheets. I didn't need to Google like principles and values. These things are just like jumping out at me. And I kind of just sat there, and I remember actually kind of gives me goosebumps thinking about that moment now. Because I came into the team, we had a team meeting the next day, and, we're kind of like 1 or 2 weeks into business closure. And, I came into this meeting with this whiteboard that I'd written up at home, and I just propped it up in front of the team, a big circle of people. And I was like, right, I've like, we're going to like, let me just talk to you guys about values. And I had these 6 values on this board. And the thing that made this moment different to every other time we talked about values was that I had meaning behind every single value. So I had my own story, which made honesty and humbleness special. I had my own story, which made taking ownership special. I had my own story as to why being a good human was important. And I relayed these stories, which made it personal to me. And so I kind of shared this story. And I remember I was getting emotional talking to my team about all this, because like it was really triggering some memories and thoughts. And suddenly, like, as I was just talking, like just all this clarity was coming, because I was looking at these people in the room that didn't align. And suddenly I was like, that's why I don't like you. That's why we don't align.
Yep.
Because you tick one of these boxes and you don't tick 5 of them. That's why I love you, because you tick all 6 of these, and that's why we're going to be friends forever. You know, and it was like in this conversation and I'm in this meeting, I was like, this makes sense now. Like all this, you know, I spent all these years, 10 years running this business, and I finally now have almost like a black and white guideline as to what makes a great team member and what doesn't make it good. So it wasn't, you know, I'd hired people based on being like, oh yeah, I kind of like you, and you've got like a good CV, like come and join a team. And I'd fired people, or I should say struggle to fire people, because there was just something that just told me I didn't really like him, but I didn't really have grounds to let go of them. It was like, you're kind of doing your job, you're making us money, so maybe it's not right that I get rid of you, but there's just something about you that's not quite right. And suddenly, like in that meeting, tracing those values, it just all made sense to me. And like in the week following that, I basically finished, after talking about these 6 values, I basically said, listen, you've now got 3 options. Option number 1 is that you read these 6 values, and when you do a bit of introspection, you just know that you align with these 6 values. And if that's you, then like you got nothing to worry about. We're going to be here forever. We're going to have a great time. If you're reading these values and you're realizing, shit, actually, I don't align with all those values, then really you've got 2 options. Number 1, let's sit down together and let's create a plan to evolve you, to change you, to get you to understand these values. And maybe one day you'll embrace the values. Or option 2 is that you realize you just don't align with these values. Like there's the door, you can leave right now. And I'd never said anything like that before, but it was just easy.
Yeah.
And I remember the team just sat there like, you know, jaws dropping, being like, what the fuck? And I had, you know, you could just see on the faces of the people who aligned with the values were like, yes, 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 this is what I've been waiting for. The people who were questioning, you know, and realizing there were parts of those values that they didn't agree with, or realize that they'd fallen short with, was now thinking like, what do I do? Do I really want to be a part of this? And therefore, am I willing to make the steps to change and evolve as a person? Or they're like, this just isn't for me. And so, you know, that next week or so, I sat down with quite a lot of people who realized, I basically said, you know, I left it to them. I obviously knew who the people were who didn't align. And I said, you know, I'm going to be available to sit down and talk to you guys whenever you want. We can just have a talk about it. Funnily enough, like a couple of those people came forward who I expected to come forward. We had a conversation, and, you know, those people are now still a part of this team and are amazing contributors to the community and have like done so much self-growth and evolution. And there was a few people who I was waiting to hear back from that just never came forward. And, you know, we essentially ended up letting those people go probably in the next week or so. And that was all the evolution for the team that we have now, you know, those values. And now I hire based on values and I fire based on values. And this team is all about values. Like, you know, CVs and experience kind of important, but I also know we can teach people how to write programs and how to be a great coach. But if at the base and the fundamentals of all of it, if we just don't align as human beings, it's just never going to work, because that's the type of team and that's the type of company I want to build.
Awesome. So great, mate. So great. Just inspiring to hear you stand up there and be vulnerable in front of your team. Like, leadership really takes that courage, and it's impressive to see that you've got that courage to stand up there and put it on the table. It's not like you told them get out the door. You sort of did, but in the reality, you gave them the choice to get on board with what you're trying to build, or there is the door, your choice. And, you know, some guys have obviously come on board and had a growth mindset about changing that. And those that haven't aligned, you know, it's given you that ability to let them go and to create a stronger team, which is so, so impressive, because I think a lot of business owners really struggle to do that. And the power of, you know, finding these values, even though it took you 3 years to get there, has obviously helped you grow your business in the way you want to go. Obviously, getting rid of people, that's a hard thing. It's a hard task. Like, what other things have you found to be really difficult in terms of being a business owner and being a leader?
Oh, so I mean, like, just as hard as hiring, like, so just as hard as firing, like, hiring is still so hard. You know, like, trying to find someone in an interview process that aligns with your values, like, it's still something that I'm not nailing yet. You know, like, the interview process for us is like a 5-step process now, which starts with, you know, a written application. And then it's like a series of interviews, which starts with me. And then it goes to other members of my team, which, you know, I'm basically gathering their opinions and their thoughts. And then it's like getting them into the environment and seeing what they're like with other human beings. Like, are you actually a good human? Are you actually honest? Are you actually this, that, and the other? And it's, it's a long drawn out process. I really believe in the concept of like, fire fast, hire slow, but just as to how slow, like I'm realizing that many of my hires are still not slow enough. What feels like a really drawn out long process. I'm sometimes have, the coach or the employee arrive on your doorstep and you're like, no, this is still not quite. How did I miss that? How did that slip through the gaps? And I think, so I think, just dealing with human beings is the hardest part of being a leader, I would say, but it's also the beauty of what makes being a leader so amazing is that, you've got things like emotions and feelings and this big brain, which is changing all the time and all the people around you, which means that like, you have to be willing to invest the time into people if you want to be a people organization. Sometimes you think maybe it would be easier if we were all just robots and we didn't have this brain and I could just hit the instructions on a keyboard and everyone just did it. But then I'd also be like, well, where's the fun and excitement in that? Where's like the beauty in like relationship building and, like celebrating wins together and celebrating losses together. Like I love all of that. But it's also, it's taxing and it's really tiring. And you've just got to be willing to put in the work to be able to do it. Because, in the past, I've always had a team since starting a business, but I had just been so focused on the work being like coaching people, that I didn't have the time and energy to think about my employees or my team or my colleagues, and I wasn't investing time into them. But I know now that like employees and team is actually the most important thing, because without them, like nothing else will exist. The clients won't be there, the business won't be there, the growth won't be there. And so like those are your most important assets aside from yourself. And so, I would say that just dealing with people is probably the hardest and most challenging thing that has ever been and will continue to be, if this is the type of organization that I want to run, which is, a people-based organization.
Yeah, I can see that, mate. And I definitely resonate with that. I think when you go from, like you said, having your own business and just taking care of yourself and your clients or your members to employing staff and then having to be a leader and manage that sort of stuff, it's such a tricky process. I think a lot of coaches who open gyms don't think about that side of the picture.
Sometimes you think it would be easier if I was just by myself. But then it's like, it's not the same. There's so much beauty in being a part of a team. And like, I love social connection. I think human beings are very much wired to be social creatures. And, it's such an important part of happiness and fulfillment. Actually, whilst it might be easier and a little bit less stressful at times to be by myself, I actually think that this is always what I want to have. And I always want to be surrounded. You imagine, the utopian dream is like just be surrounded by people who are think and live and breathe the exact same way as you. But we all have our own unique personalities. And I'm like, even, what I get to experience now every day is like, I get to hang out with people who I would actually, I actually call them my friends. And, you read business books like, you got to have those clean lines between, business, professional and social. Don't blur those lines or shit's going to get tricky. I'm like, no, if I can actually be friends with the people I work with, I think that's amazing. Imagine going to work with your best mates every day. Of course, like there are challenging times because when you need to discipline or when you need to have hard conversations, you still got to have that ability to do that, which I think I can do well. But yeah, that's essentially the dream.
Yeah, it's great, mate. You're building your own world. You're building your own universe and you're inviting the people that you want to be in that world to be around you. And obviously that gives you energy, motivates you, keeps you on the path of your vision and your values, which is just incredible. You mentioned back there before, like sacrifices that you've had to make. Obviously you've made a lot of sacrifices at the start of your career, and now moving into this leadership role, there's probably things you've had to sacrifice. What are they? What are the things you think you've had to sacrifice to get to where you are now?
Yeah, I think like even the word sacrifice it's probably quite open to interpretation, because I think when most people think about sacrifice, it means like they're not able to do the thing they really want to do because they're pursuing something else. But actually now when I think about it, I would say in my eyes, there's very little sacrifice, because actually what I'm doing every day are things that I actually want to be doing every day. And like, I still wake up every single morning with like, fire in my belly to be like, I cannot wait to dig into these things. I'm also very aware that those things may change tomorrow. And if they change tomorrow, then like I'll have to reevaluate all of this and find what my new passion and my new purpose is. So, but I think when most people, if you were to ask the people around me, like, what does Ed sacrifice on a daily basis? They would probably say like, you know, time spent with friends. They'd probably think like social engagements, like alcohol and drinking and, you know, partying. But I don't see those things as sacrifices anymore, because like those things actually take away from my ability to do things I really want to do. But I think, you know, the question why a lot of people feel like there is sacrifice when they pursue something challenging is because I think a lot of time people don't have the clarity on why they're doing something and what the reason for their purpose is. And if you're not digging into the why and why you're pursuing something, then everything can feel like a sacrifice. Oh, I don't get to do the socializing. I don't get to do this. I don't get to do that because I have to do this. And I'm always like, you don't have to do anything. Like, we choose to do it. And if you choose to do it, then really it's not a sacrifice. But I really encourage my team all the time, like, dig into what it is that you want to do and make sure you have clarity on why you want to do it. And if at any point in time those things change from what you were doing yesterday, then let's have a conversation about it and let's change what you're doing on a daily basis. But yeah, I guess not so direct answer to your question on sacrifice, but I think it all comes down to like priority and purpose and why.
Yeah, no, mate, that's an awesome answer, because it's about clarity and it's about goals. Usually when we set goals, there is that sacrifice. You know, clients see it as a sacrifice. If they've got to lose weight and they've got to go on a diet, I've got to sacrifice my favorite foods or whatever it is. But, you know, how much do those goals mean to you? What is the why behind what you do? And to have that clarity is obviously a great way to look at it. How often do you sit down and think about that? How often do you think about your goals, your visions, where you're taking your career, what's happening in your world?
Yeah, actually, you know, I was just talking about this on our own podcast with one of my coaches the other day. Like, I always get asked, like, what's your 1 year, 5 year, 10-year vision? I'm always like, I don't know. I've never been someone to sit down and like map out, like even writing a business plan. I've actually never written a business plan. You know, it's just, I'm very much like a live day to day. And this is, you know, perhaps a crutch of mine. Like, I think it's just something I need to be better at, is having at least a little bit more clarity as to what the future might look like. But, you know, I'm very much like, if what I'm doing today brings me fire and brings me passion and brings me fulfillment, then I'm just going to keep on doing it. And I very much know that if I'm doing those things every day, like, a great future destination awaits somewhere. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I just know that if I'm doing the right thing and doing the good thing today, that it's going to lead to something really great in the future. And, you know, that's proved to be true with everything that's happened so far. When I'm doing the right thing and I'm doing the good thing, like, things do happen in your favor. But, you know, every now and then I do have moments of reflection where suddenly, like, I have a bit more clarity on what I want the future to look like. Like, you know, just last week, I just had this kind of an epiphany as to like what I want the future to look like now, or what it might look like. And, you know, there's certain things, like, sometimes I think about like my own life, like, where am I living? You know, right now I can see the sea. It's a really long way away from me and I'm really high up, but like, I want to eventually live on a beach where I can step out my front door every morning, get in the ocean, have a coffee with my feet in the sand, have a tiny little speedboat, which I can take out and go fishing and go wake surfing. Like, that's going to happen at some point in time. I don't know when it's going to happen or where it's going to be in the world, but it's going to be there and it's going to be sunny, of course. You know, I've learned a lot from this last 2.5 years of, you know, your business being closed down for things outside of your control. And when you have, you know, brick and mortar, like a gym, like, these things can happen. Like, who's to say another pandemic is not going to happen again? You know, like, your building could burn down. You know, someone can come and rob every piece of the gym equipment in your gym. I mean, that would be a pretty impressive task if someone did that. But, you know, like, these things can all happen. And it's really made me realize, it's like, well, oh, and then also, like, you know, what's happened in the last 2.5 years with like the growth of the process programming, which is essentially an online platform, which I love it. You know, if it's still kind of a part-time job. So I essentially have 2 full-time jobs. Coastal and Process, it's their own entities. And eventually, like, I want to be all in with the process, and I want to be really focusing on growing that in terms of education and training and helping people. Because Coastal, you know, as a business, you know, it's great, but it kind of runs itself now. It doesn't mean that you don't need to keep on working on it and finding ways to improve. But, you know, I think the time where I can hand over the reins for someone else to come and be the head coach and for someone else to be, the main person there is not probably that far away anymore now, and I've just only realized that. So it's like, well, what is the future of the process program going to be? I'm like, well, I want to have a process program in headquarters somewhere, where, we're running classes, we're coaching people, but it's also like a home where all our athletes and clients around the world can come and train. It's going to be in a nice location somewhere where, it's kind of like a destination place where you can have some sun, you can swim, you get some water, and you can live a really healthy, holistic life. Like that's what I want to have now. Cause I'm like, I can see that process programming is growing bigger than Coastal now. And it will continue to grow. And to be honest, the limits for growth are kind of endless because that's just kind of the nature of an online program. Whereas, before we just got locked down 4 months ago, like we had a waiting list at Coastal. We actually couldn't get any more people into our doors to train. And so we kind of maxed out its capacity. And I'm sure, we're going to have to do some rebuilding when we open up again now, but I want to get to that point again. And when we get to that point, like what's next? Where do we go? Yeah. And so, I don't really sit down and write plans and visions, but I am doing a lot of self-reflection all the time. And the reflections is what I'm doing right now something that I really, really want to be doing? Or is what I'm doing, can it be improved and can it change? In which case that might lead to a thought in the future. And then, I share that with my team, just the other day. And, I think a lot of people will find that quite a scary task. Like you're telling your team that like maybe one day Coastal Fitness might not exist and there's going to be a process program at headquarters somewhere. What about all their jobs? What are they going to do? But I'm like, I want to let you guys know because some of you are going to be licking your lips and be like, that's what I want. Some of you are like, I kind of just enjoyed a comfortable life of just being a coach every single day. In which case, like, I don't know, maybe our time together is limited. I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my answer.
Mate, that's a great vision. And I think, that vision's probably come from the experience that you've had now. You've built this process plan and it's given you that more freedom and it's given you a chance to sit back and question, where do I want to take this career? And also to have such a strong team behind you, like, that if you were going to leave the gym, you're leaving it in awesome hands. You've got a great team you trust and the members obviously all look up to that team. So, the hard work has paid off and, maybe it is time for you to sit back and enjoy life a little bit more, mate.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like what I do know is that I want to, it's funny. I just put an Instagram post up the other day because I like to use my social media platform as just like a bit of a thought dump. I never thought I liked writing, but I actually think now I do quite like writing and just sharing ideas. Maybe I'm not the best writer, but I'll just put it down as I feel it and as I see it. And the post was actually about trying to find a little more balance and essentially trying to work a little bit less. And everyone was responding going, oh, I hope you're happy now that you've done this. This is really cool. I'm like, no, I was really, really fucking happy the whole time. And I've loved every day of it, but I'm just trying to, and, I want to enjoy other things as well as still being able to show up 100% to my job. And that just means, rather than working 7 days a week, I want to try and work 5 days a week. But in those 5 days, I'm still going to be, fully present, fully focused, have intensity with what I'm doing. But I need those 2 days now to balance me out because I think as we get older, we get a little bit less resilient. I still want my body to feel great every day. And I find more often than not, my body doesn't feel great, probably just because of all the workload I do take on. And when I don't get to train and express my physical body the way that I want to, that gets to me a little bit sometimes. So I'm like, how can I be energized mentally and emotionally, but also, continue to see what my body can achieve physically. Like that's really what I want. I want like optimalness and everything. And I realize that doing too much of any of those things is not going to allow me to do that.
Yeah, for sure, mate. You've already mentioned some great habits that you've installed. You talked about a morning routine. You've got an evening routine that sort of sets you up. You're talking about writing and journaling. Like that's a great way to obviously manage our thoughts and our stress. What other tools do you use? What have you found really helpful for you to stay on top of your mental health and on top of your career?
So I think two things. One of the amazing things is, like honesty and vulnerability and being able to share that with other people. So we have this thing at Coastal, again, it started at the beginning of COVID. We have something called Book Club. And so Book Club is every Monday, the entire team gets together, coaching team, operations team. I've got some staff who live overseas now, relocated, but they still work for us. And so people join in Zoom calls. We basically have this really, really crowded office. We need to get a bigger office at some point, where basically we read a book, we read a chapter of a book, or we listen to a podcast, or we watch a TED talk, or we watch something on Netflix. It kind of changes every week, but something to do with like self-growth and self-development. And essentially we have 45 minutes allocated once a week where we just share and we just talk about what was interesting, how things related to us. And essentially it has become, which we kind of laugh at when we put the term on it, it's basically become group therapy, right? We have this group therapy every week where we talk about this thing and we share our struggles and we share what's challenging us. We share our wins, we share our losses. And, I think there's something really, really powerful in being vulnerable at deepening human connections and relationships. And so the more we're vulnerable and the more we talk about the hard things, the closer we get as a team. But it's also like, it gives you a chance, gives every person on our team a chance to like get what's on their chest into an open platform. So for a lot of my team, they don't like journaling, or they haven't created the time to make journaling work for them. But this is their form of journaling, the chance to just get their struggles off their chest. And even just sometimes not everyone in the team talks. A lot of our team members just sit and listen. But I know that just by listening to other people sharing their struggles, there's bits and bobs that are relating to them, and that's allowing them to grow and mature and develop as people as well. So I think not every company has that. And I think so little companies have that connection, or that give their employees that opportunity to share. And, this is something that's only started 2.5 years ago. And they say culture formation takes 6 years. So I'm like, holy, if we're only 3 years into this, or 2.5 years into, I'd love to see where we evolve to in 6 years. But I think essentially having people, call it your friends or your employees or your family, where you have that relationship, which allows you to be fully open and vulnerable, I think is a super, super important and really, really powerful thing when it comes to managing and dealing with mental health. Like, I meditate quite a lot. I actually started meditating in about 2016 when I couldn't work out how to sleep well. And in hindsight, I know a lot of my sleep was because I was just working way too much and just not really understanding the concept of stress. But I was kept on hearing, oh, meditation this, meditation that. So I basically downloaded Headspace, started meditating like in its early days. And I still have Headspace now. I still use it very, very often. I've explored other forms of meditation, but essentially it's just, giving myself small periods of time throughout the day to just connect with myself and be deeply present. And that then allows me to bring that concept of being present into everything else that I'm doing. So, I knew before this call, I was doing some work, just checking in our process program community. I knew that if I went straight from that, jumping onto this call, my head was going to be a scramble based on the things that I've just been doing and trying to have this conversation with you. So, electronics away, quick 5 minutes of just breathing, turn on the call, and like, I feel fully engaged in this conversation. And if I'm going to go and train after this, which I will, like, I'm going to need to take another little 5 minutes just to create that separation. So I would say that, having the ability to have those people to talk to and share openly with, number one, super important. But number two, your meditation has been super powerful for me.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. I really love that advice. A lot of the coaches that I talk to, so right now I'm working with a lot of coaches who are, having an online business. And one of the biggest things that they say they miss is the interaction with their peers and interaction with other coaches. They've just got no ability to connect and bounce ideas and just even have that banter. So it sounds like, what you guys have done there with group therapy is definitely a powerful sort of thing. That's great to hear, mate. Is there anything else? Like, it sounds like you're doing so much for the people around you. It sounds like a great team with the values. It sounds awesome that you've got this group therapy thing. What other things are you doing? Is there more?
I think in a nutshell, it's just constant investment in relationships. That's real. I know it sounds super easy and it sounds like surely there's got to be more than that. But it's like, if people feel loved and cared for, like, they'll give anything to you. You think about like your best friends, your family members, and we say like, oh, we die for these people. We do anything for them. Like, imagine having that same belief in your team and your culture. And so, I really do believe that just investing in those relationships, and it means that like putting time aside every month to jump on calls with, members of my team who are now living in Australia and who now are living in Thailand. And it's like, I'm not catching up just to tick a box, but it's just like, just checking in and seeing how they're doing. And like, being a little bit vulnerable, being a little bit honest, having a bit of a laugh, having some connection. And just like, it's the same way when you think about, as a coach, how powerful checking in with your clients is. Like, sometimes you forget because you're like, oh, we work with a lot of people remotely, or you're not getting to have that face-to-face interaction with them. And so you think, just if I give some feedback on a workout, that's enough. They feel like the coach is there and checking in. But if you actually book in that like monthly 30-minute, 45-minute call with that client, just to chat about maybe nothing to do with training or goals at all, but just to have that connection and the conversation with someone, have a bit of a laugh, talk about some struggles, what that does to the relationship when you hang up that phone call, suddenly like you've just connected to a deeper level. And, I think it's such an important part. It's why with the process program, even though we have a group program, and if you look at most group programs around the world, it's like prescribe the program, follow the program. I'll take your money, cool, see you later. That sounds terrible. I didn't mean to really bash group training. I think the group training generally is doing an amazing thing. But I don't just want to be a training program which offers a training prescription and you just go and do it in your own time. Like I want to try to build this community somehow. And what we've found is the only way we can do that is everyone who joins the process programming gets assigned a coach. Now, everyone who joins a process program, they're following one of 6 programs. So it generally is like, but I think what makes it special is that, knowing that you've got a coach checking in you every day, liking performances, giving you feedback, just creates that something a little bit more, which makes that person want to be a part of this. It's more than just, and I used to think it was just about the training program, and going back to staff, I used to think it was just give them a means to make money and they'll be happy. But it's not, like we're human beings, we're complex creatures. Like we need connection. We need to feel growth. We need to feel love. We need to feel support. We need guidance. And essentially that's how my thinking, I guess, as a leader has evolved over the years. Like you got to provide more. If you want to keep people for a really long time, yes, like they need to be able to earn money to pay for housing and feel like they're developing themselves and developing a career for themselves. Yes, that's super important. They need to feel like they're progressing in some way, shape, or form. But even with that, like, not everyone wants to progress the same way. I always used to see progression as like you start as a group coach, then you become a personal trainer, and then you start coaching people online, and then you become an educator. And like that is the progression of a coach. But it's actually not, because a lot of people don't have any interest in becoming an educator. Some people just really love coaching group classes. That's where they're in a flow state. And for the foreseeable future, that's all they want to be doing. So I think, just another part to what helps us keep this team is just that constant questioning of what are you doing right now? And is what you're doing right now what you really want to be doing? And if it's not, let's talk about it. And it's just a constant redistribution of jobs, responsibilities, goals, and direction. But I know, just now you've asked a question. Now I'm thinking about lots of other shit that I do. I used to do a yearly review process. It was like, the annual review, which is what every boss says, every book says you have to do. And essentially the annual review, you sit down with your team and it's a fucking horrible meeting because you're coming in knowing that you're going to have to discipline this person. You're going to sugarcoat the shit out of it. You're going to tell them they've done some good things, but really like everyone in that room is just waiting for you to deliver the shit they need to improve on. They've got mass anxiety over it because they're like, fuck, what have I done? What have I not done? What's he going to say? And so, I did that for a long time. And then I basically said one day, it's about a few years ago, I was like, I'm going to stop these annual reviews. They're horrible. Instead, one of our values is going to be give feedback when feedback is due. And when you receive feedback, receive it as a gift. Okay, cool. So when I implemented this value, I was like, this is awesome. I don't need to do reviews anymore, because if someone's performing well, I'm going to let them know they're performing well and what I love about what they're doing. And if someone needs reminding or a kick up the arse on something, I'll just give them that feedback. But, you just get into habits and you end up not giving feedback as often as it's due because you got 100 other things to do. You end up giving feedback on superficial things, which is like, oh, you did a good job with that class, or you did, thanks for tidying up the weight plates, where it's like, actually, there are more important things this person needs to receive feedback on. And so, in the last year and a half, I've actually gone back to the review process, but rather than an annual review, the concept of give feedback when it's due, that's still very much a part of what we do. And generally speaking, I think my team, we do it pretty well. We definitely still need to be better at it. Some people still have hesitant sometimes in giving people feedback because they're scared about the repercussions. Some people still don't receive feedback entirely as a gift. There's maybe a bit of an ego there, or there's some things that need a bit of unpacking. But generally speaking, we're pretty good at giving each other feedback. But rather than an annual review, we do quarterly reviews now. So I have that set on my reminders. Every 4 months, I need to sit down with my coaching team, even if it's just 30 minutes, and we just have a chat. Like, what's going well, what's not going well? Are you happy? Are you not happy? What do we need to change? And like, it's such an important part. Every coach, every time I do it, as always reaches out and is like, I'm so happy we're doing this now. Like, thank you for investing the time just to hear. And often I don't really speak in those sessions. I just sit and listen. I've just got my notepad out on my laptop and I'm just making notes. I'm like, okay, cool. I think we need to make some changes here, there. And does that sound good? Yes, let's do it. And so, even though we're so tight knit, even though we feel like we can talk about almost anything with each other, having that official sit down, let's just talk about work here and your job and how can we make that better for you, is still super, super important. And so that's going to be something I'll keep in forever. And, that's, as the team grows, I'm aware that I'm going to have to start to create, probably small subgroups of other leaders who are going to basically have their own people that they provide reviews for. I've got an amazing general manager. She looks after our operations team. So I don't do their review anymore. I used to, but now that's under her jurisdiction. So that'll be something, there's just those frequent scheduled touch points are really, really important.
Yeah.
I think that's it, Stretch.
Yeah, it's wicked, mate. No, it's so good. It's so good. I love the way that you're striving to improve stuff all the time. It's not like, we do a yearly review and that's how it's done. You're reflecting on it. Is this working? Is it making things better? If it's not, you're changing it. And it might work for a little while, but you're open to change it again. And it's just so great to see that adaptability or that flexibility in the structure and everything you've got going, mate. It's been such an inspiring conversation. I love so much of what you've said as a leader. And I think so many people can learn a lot from the way, you're running your business and the things you've sort of said today, mate. If people want to get in touch with you, if people want to find out more about the process plan, all this sort of stuff, where can they go?
Yeah, so the process, www.theprocessprogram, basically everything you need's on there. We have different programs. Check out your programs. But I think most importantly, don't just take my word for it. Do your research on who we are. Make sure we align with what you actually want. We've got things like prerequisites for all our programs, which we really are quite strict on. We really tell people you must be able to meet those to ensure your safety and progression. So just a little caveat on that. Personally, probably Instagram would be the best. Ed_Haynes_coach. You can send me questions or thoughts. I really try and respond to absolutely everyone on there. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the two main places to find me.
Wicked, Ed. Awesome, mate. Thank you very much for your time today. It's greatly appreciated. And yeah, it was such a powerful podcast just to hear all those great things that you added. Cheers.
Thank you, Stretch. It's actually really nice being on someone else's podcast because we have our own podcast where I'm generally the host, and it's always nice to actually have the questions fired at you because, this has actually been almost like a form of therapy for me as well. Like, it's just reminded me, I've done a lot of reflecting already and put thoughts out there, and it probably actually had a bit of epiphanies again just by talking with you. So yeah, you're an amazing host, Stretch. It's really good to connect again, and thanks for having me on this.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Protect the Asset podcast. I'd be grateful if you can leave a comment, add a review, and share this podcast with those who might find it helpful. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all the success and happiness with your personal training career.